Fantasy can cross over into a number of genres where you wouldn't expect it to be found. Horror is one, of course. I dare you to watch Pan's Labyrinth and not tell me it's a horrific fantasy. But another is science fiction. Sci-fi and fantasy go hand in claw, and no more so than when it came to Godzilla and his family of monsters. On this episode, we're doing something a little different. We're going to recent and, as of this recording, Oscar-nominated with the new modern classic Godzilla Minus One. The return of the king of the monsters from his home country of Japan, and an origin story never previously witnessed. Prepare to be amazed as we see a Godzilla story told in a way that will surprise you and who became one of the biggest hits of 2023 as we fly towards the monster in Godzilla Minus One. Godzilla is, to put it mildly, a god in film. Since 1954, the radioactive kaiju has been destroying movie screens in Japan, and a lot of other places recently, for movie audiences around the world. Nearly 40 movies in total star the nuclear-powered monster, with countless comics, a few cartoon series. I always wanted a pager of my own so I could call up Godzilla when I needed him. Books, games, you name it. You can even zip line into the monster's mouth at a theme park in Japan. Life goals. Godzilla has gone through quite a journey in the films that featured him. The original was very much an allegory for Japan and the fact that nukes had destroyed parts of their country. It was very serious and would have its message tweaked a bit with the American edit that inserted Raymond Burr in scenes.
Prehistoric monster the Japanese call Godzilla has just walked out of Tokyo Bay.
But at its heart, Godzilla was something to show the world what happens when mankind messes with Mother Nature and the catastrophe that can happen from it. This message would be seen a number of times over the years, but Godzilla would morph from a monster to a hero in the Japanese series of films, even becoming more than a little goofy at times. Then through the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, Godzilla would become far more serious and would take a harder sci-fi tone. It was in 2014 the US dived into the Godzilla pool after that movie, which shall not be named, but you know the one.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me, man! We're in his mouth! We're in his mouth!
Yeah. Personal note, I saw one of the biggest rats to exist on this earth while riding the subway in New York to watch that movie, and it was way more terrifying than Godzilla was in the film. The 2014 film that was released by Legendary Pictures became a massive hit, though it was more Aaron Taylor Johnson staring off into space than Godzilla. Is anyone else weirded out by the fact that he and Elizabeth Olsen played brother and sister in Age of Ultron, but were husband and wife here?
You know, I'm 12 minutes older than you.
Go. But the MonsterVerse series of films was born by this. On the Japanese side of things, a new era for Godzilla was started only 2 years later with Shin Godzilla, a completely different take on how Godzilla came to be, with the monster evolving over the course of the film, where the 2014 MonsterVerse film had some amazing scenes with soldiers basically jumping to their deaths in the midst of Godzilla's attack, and some strong vibes of 9/11 type destruction and clouds of debris. Shin Godzilla harkened back to Japan's disaster that happened in 2011. This was when the tsunami and earthquake caused the nuclear accident at Fukushima. Once again, Godzilla was finding use as a metaphor for nuclear disaster, this one of a different sort, and fairly recent to the film's release. It would also be the first clear evidence that the new reign of Zilla was going to be far more vicious when it came to taking on the Japanese government, something fairly rare when it comes to these films. The MonsterVerse Legendary films would see Godzilla become more of a heroic figure, a protector of Earth alongside another titan in the form of King Kong. Japan would bring Godzilla into the realm of anime in 3 different entries shared with Netflix. And then, something amazing would happen in 2023. Rather than going into the future with the King of Monsters, filmmaker Takashi Yamazaki went back into the past, all the way back to World War II. He'd bring a fresh take to the old god, and it would be glorious, heartfelt, and beautiful. And it would blow away the box office in a way Godzilla films from Japan hadn't in a long time. It would also do it in a way that would criticize the treatment of Japanese by their own government after the war, as well as how they were treated by the world. It was a point of view and a serious subject that, again, hadn't really been seen in this sort of film. Godzilla Minus One follows the story of a kamikaze pilot named Koichi and fellow survivors of World War II who try to rebuild their lives in Japan. He's joined in this by a young woman named Noriko and a child, Akiko. Coming together to survive the aftermath, they, along with the rest of Japan, must deal with a creature named Godzilla. The monster is made even more terrifying and destructive after it is dosed with radiation from US nuclear testing and begins attacking Japan over and over again. The people of the country, after having seen the ravages of war firsthand, have to face this new and seemingly impossible threat alone and find a way to stop it. They must do this while dealing with the scars, both mental and physical, that were left behind, along with trying to rebuild their shattered lives after the war. Godzilla Minus One isn't a direct sequel, of course, to Shin Godzilla. The monster in this is fully formed and not like the evolving creature in Shin. This monster is more of the classic version of the Big G, first and foremost. Director and writer Takashi Yamazaki, who was also the effects supervisor in the film, had previously worked on the epic-looking Godzilla the Ride, which he had directed and made the special effects for. That ride, which you can experience via video on YouTube, entails a fight between not only Godzilla and Ghidorah, but also includes bonus Rodan. I would sell a kidney to get on this thing, and that would probably have to happen since it's in Japan. Yamazaki based his design for Godzilla in Minus One off of the look from the ride's Godzilla, as well as taking cues from the original film's depiction of the monster. The Godzilla in Minus One is honestly beautiful and terrifying. And what Yamazaki did with not only the monster, but the human characters, was take a page out of Spielberg's way of making Jaws. Godzilla is always around. He's not necessarily seen completely, even down to shots of him swimming with his dorsal fins floating above the water, just like a shark, letting you know he's there. This makes it more awesome and, oh shit, when he does show up on screen and lets loose. Yamazaki also makes use of the human characters, who in both the US and Japanese films in the Godzilla library are typically not that interesting. They are either stiff as a board, annoying, or so over the top you find yourself just not caring. Here, the filmmakers have created a group of characters who are unique in that they are not only interesting, but are funny and likable. You care about them, and the scenes that focus on the human drama, which Zilla fans typically just want to fast forward through, are compelling. You actually give a damn about them. And the film works because of them, and the heart of the story being that the people come together to stop the monster when no one else will. Honestly, I never thought I'd find myself crying in a Godzilla film. Well, usually it's when Mothra is involved, but you know what I mean. But here I was, crying happy tears and caring about people in a Godzilla movie. How does that even happen? The entire cast, and especially Ryunosuke Kamiki, need to be commended. I'd never seen a lead character shown in a Godzilla film so absolutely laid bare and emotionally broken in a way that you just want to hug them. Not only are the human characters being this important seemingly rare, but the actual plot and story and how Godzilla is used here is unique. Yamazaki targets the outright heartless manner in which the Japanese government sent kamikaze pilots to their deaths, and in the case of this film, still sending the pilots to their deaths, knowing the war was nearly over. It was even more pointless. It also shows the actual trauma of the war on those who survive. It's not a celebration per se, but shows Koichi's PTSD and survivor's guilt, as well as the self-loathing he inflicts upon himself for having disobeyed orders that were a death sentence. He shouldn't have lived. He should be dead. He doesn't deserve the happiness he's offered with Noriko and Akiko. The truth is, not only is Godzilla here a metaphor for the horrors of the nuclear age and its effect on nature, as well as the destruction brought about by war, but he also represents Koichi's own internal monster, which he eventually defeats. Godzilla Minus One manages to mix not only great writing and great performances, but also some of the best visual effects I've seen. Again, Yamazaki is to be celebrated along with his team of 35 visual effects artists. It just looked amazing and brutal, and at the same time, beautiful. This crew did something that in the over 70 plus years of Godzilla's life in film has never happened, and that was to be nominated for an Academy Award for visual effects. The first Godzilla movie ever to be nominated for an Oscar. The video of the team anxiously awaiting the nominations list and seeing the film appear is epic. There were a total of 610 visual effects shots, and I can't say enough about how freaking amazing Godzilla looks in this and the lead up to his atomic breath. The sound and music are also to be celebrated. The score uses music from the original Godzilla films, as well as a couple others from the classic run. The sound effect of Godzilla's roar was recorded using an outdoor stadium to really nail the bone-shaking feel of hearing that monster let loose. Godzilla Minus One hit theaters in the States and around the world at the perfect time. With the SAG strike happening, a number of films were shifted from what they would have had as their regular release dates. This was a prime opportunity for the film to give movie-hungry fans something to sink their teeth into beyond being a freaking epic movie. With the reported, no one really knows the exact number, budget of between $10 and $15 million, which is a fraction of the budget of most major Hollywood blockbusters. Since its release, Godzilla Minus One has made over $100 million, and the tally continues to grow. As of right now, the film's theatrical run is about to end, but it's doing it with a special flourish with the release for a limited run, minus color, a black and white version of the film to capture the feel of the classic. Godzilla Minus One was my favorite movie of 2023. It was a magic experience on the big screen and something I can't recommend enough. It felt like being a kid again, but at the same time, told a story that was timely and timeless, using one of the greatest movie monsters ever to stomp on the silver screen to not just scare us and entertain us, but to teach us about humanity. And that's what all the best fantasy and sci-fi films do.